Welcome back to Connect with Jonathan and Mark. This is an interesting episode from a different perspective. Normally, you will see that we have family members of victims, and they will come from cousins to moms to dads to brothers, and sometimes law enforcement too. But in this episode, you're going to see a community member be very affected by a case that they had to start a podcast, bring attention to it, and bring it to the masses, really. So guys, please welcome Amelia Courtney. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to tell you this. I know it's going to sound so freaking weird, so trust me. It's going to sound really weird. But last night, I had a visit, I will say. Like I always get, before I speak to people, I always get visits at times, is the best way I can explain it. And it was unfortunately like a murder case. So I'm assuming it's for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to tell you what I see. And when I do readings, I kind of just look off just because it's a way for me to hyper focus. Do you mind if I do a quick one? Just because
that'd be great.
There's two women. So I just want to, they came through last night. Yeah. So who's the CA name? And it's with a V name.
Carla Atkins and Vickie Stout.
They're together. And the V name is with her father, it seems. Because it seems like he unfortunately may have there's like another unfortunate series of events that happened, but different cases is what I see. And they were coming to me last night because I'm assuming, that's why I didn't know if it was for you or for someone else who I'm speaking to, but there's a lot that they want to talk about and a lot of thankfulness they keep sharing with me and like gratitude, really. I wanted to ask you, who's the MA name around them that's living?
Margie is their mother's name. So it's Margie Atkins, Margie Nell.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's like a whole lot. Do you mind if I go into it? I don't want to...
Oh my gosh, I love this. This is amazing already.
Okay, because I don't want to step on toes or anything. Oh, wow. So this is still unsolved, I'm assuming, because they're saying that they're thanking you and one other person. It's you and one other person for bringing so much attention, it seems, or eyeballs, I guess, to a case. Who's the L name?
Lainey Sullivan. She's my co-host.
Okay. So I want to ask you a couple things because she's showing me about... Do you mind if I talk about the case in particular? And then I'll go to you because there's some stuff. So the first thing is she keeps putting a truck in front of me. She keeps tapping my Gatorade bottle, which is blue. So she's saying it's like a blue truck or something. And what she's also saying to me too, and I want to let you know this, I think, police departments or just in general or whatever, sometimes they drop the ball when it comes to cases and they don't... There could be 100 different reasons why. There could be 100. But she's saying to me that at the time, and she's laughing at this, she's saying it wasn't a voluntary leave, is what she's saying. Like, she didn't just do it and like run away. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, and there's a case that I helped out in recently, the Hannah Kobayashi case, and it was a voluntary missing person, right? Like eventually they're like, she chose to go out on her own. She's saying it was nothing like that. She's also saying to me too, that it's someone in I guess I'm assuming the color blue or like a truck or something. But really with that is someone that she was familiar with is what she's saying. It wasn't someone who she was like it wasn't a random person luring someone into, and it's a really weird comparison, but she's putting in my head. Do you know when we were growing up, our parents were like, don't go to people that offer you candy in like a truck or something? She's saying it was nothing like that. And what she's also saying to me too is there's someone that's living with a really unique G name that she's saying that needs to, I'm assuming that they asked this person for help when they were younger. There's some type of, because she's saying she reached out for something and it's like not right place, right time. It's like just like the timing of events because she's reaching her hand out. And she's saying that this person needs to take a deep breath and not worry, not hold on to guilt, because she's saying that this person is like holding on to some type of guilt. It's a G-O name.
Okay.
The only name I know is like Gordon or
yeah, that's her sister.
Gordon.
Gordon.
Okay, that's because she's saying that So I do have a question. So this is where I'm confused at. Are they not full sisters? Is there like
No,
someone?
they're
Okay. Because they're just showing me there's a third parent involved or whatever, which typically would mean like there's like a half sibling. They share a mutual, but there was a like someone else. So this does seem like this someone that she knows. It's like very, when I say connected to law enforcement, typically it could be a family member or someone that they were close with. It doesn't mean that they were, I don't know how to explain it, like in cahoots, like, or whatever you want to call it. Because the reason why I'm saying that is she's saying people protect their own, is what she keeps repeating to me. And she keeps basically saying that I guess at this point it's going to be she's saying it's like a stop sign and then a go, then a stop sign, then a go. So it seems like throughout this like period of time, there was constant go stop with this case, because she keeps saying that it was a constant pull. But it's kind of similar to if someone is getting information that is useful, it gets pushed down or it gets removed. So this person because what she's saying is that it seems like from what she's showing to me, it's like if you're running away and someone shoots you from behind, or if someone grabs you from behind or does stuff from behind. Because what she's saying is that it's like if someone makes a sexual advance at someone and they say no, and this person's a loose cannon, or they feel like law doesn't apply to them, whatever the case can be, or if it's just as simple as they kidnap people and they do horrible things to women or whatever. Because what she's saying is like, don't think she didn't try to run or fight, is what she's saying. Like the both of them seem to run kind of separately, like close enough where I could see them like a football field potentially, or less than a football field. Because at least what she's showing to me is that the two sisters or the half sisters' bodies weren't too far from each other. Like they don't seem like one was a mile away from another one or whatever. And what she's laughing at is, I don't know if there was evidence that was quote unquote destroyed, lost or something throughout the period of time, because she's laughing, saying it was destroyed in quotations. And she's saying that because there's attention on this case, I guess now, it does seem like it's like put up or shut up is what she keeps saying to me at this point, because I don't know if she's being like literal about this. And this is like all stuff I'm going to ask you after, if I'm being honest. It does look like there was some evidence that pointed towards someone and it just all of a sudden went missing or got destroyed or something. Like it seems like that. And because she's laughing, they both are, and they keep doing quotations to it, being like, it got destroyed in transit. It got destroyed in this. It got like things like that. And she's saying, and she's laughing. She's saying like she's joking, saying it's not that difficult to move something from point A to point B without it, quote unquote, being destroyed. And what she's also showing to me too, it's a message for her mom. I mean, I'm sure people know that I'm assuming she's struggling, like you don't have the answers. It sucks. Like it's just something that sucks. I'm just assuming. She's thanking you for being a huge advocate for her, because she's saying that it seems like you're pretty involved with the mom on a daily basis, or pretty close to that. And she's saying that you are getting the support from not just the immediate, but from outside people as well too, I'm assuming a law enforcement community or just the community in general, it kind of seems. And to her that she's just very thankful. And she's also saying to me too, I wanted to ask you, were they found in the woods per se?
They were.
Because it seems like the way that she's explaining stuff in my head, and I don't know if it's this literal or not, like someone pulls up, gets in the car and goes, and then they never come back. Like something like kind of, I don't know if she's being as literal as that, but it seems like, because she's saying to me, do you know people that have like street smarts and things like that? Mm-hmm. Seems like they did. So it seems like they weren't just going to go to a random car or like a random thing. And that's what she's emphasizing, is like these theories, or I'm assuming people have theories. Everyone has theories about every case. Like that's just what the world is. I feel like it was someone that, to me, that seems very connected, or family in law enforcement. And it's just been covering tracks for a very long time. That's just kind of what it seems to me. So anyway, I just wanted to do that just because they came to my dream last night, and I was like, I have a case I'm working on tomorrow too. So I'm like, I don't know if this is for you or for the person who I'm speaking to tomorrow. So yeah, it was a bit overwhelming when I saw them, in my dream, just because the dream was, it was like they were standing there and they were saying their inches. It's kind of like when someone says you're so close, but yet so far. That's what she's saying. Like what she was showing to me, and what she was also showing to me too in the dream is, in this time period, I think people are very, I want to say like woke culture is probably what it is. Like people want to like get the truth about whatever the like situation is. And she's saying it's going to come to a head soon, because what she's showing to me was, if law enforcement and people are being your biggest barriers, like eventually something's going to happen. And that's kind of what I'm assuming she was like alluding to, in that there's been so many barriers for such a long time. And the people that were creating barriers were the people that were supposed to be knocking down barriers. So you're fighting like another fight at the same time. It's like you're not just fighting to get answers, you're fighting to get answers from the people that should be giving you answers or trying to investigate answers. So like that's what she's saying. And she's saying to like a couple people that were on her case, I'm assuming, because this happened a long time ago, correct? Like this
Right.
is not like recent, because I'm just assuming that maybe some detectives retired, passed away or something. Like it probably all checks because of how long ago it was. But I just really see, and again, I know not all police officers and not all law enforcement are bad people. They're just not. There's obviously good and bad in any field, but it does seem like that she was up against, or the family was up against, people that you think they're going to protect you, and you think they're going to do like their job, and they maybe just like lazy police work maybe at times, or like things like that. So yeah, this was a very interesting dream, which I did not expect to have on a Sunday night. So yeah, so I want to hear from you. So can you tell me about the case a little bit?
I'm blown away. First of all, I was curious how this would work since we're not blood related.
I'm assuming you're close to like the family and the case, so that's why.
Yes.
Okay.
Very close with sister, Trish Gordon, who you mentioned, the Gordon. She is the oldest sister of the girls, and they come from a large family. So like you said, they had street smarts because they were helping raise, younger siblings. And we always knew there was no way they got in the car with a stranger. That just wasn't them. That was always a given. And the blue truck, they were seen getting into a blue truck. And it's kind of, again, I can't say the name on air, on here,
Right.
But law enforcement, the head of the TBR, not the head of the TBR, but the guy running the case with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, he put the evidence in the trunk of his car and it went missing on his way to deliver it to the lab. So it went, like they said, quote unquote, missing. There's been a lot of speculation around his family member, a family member of his, that there was another person with him, with one of his family members, who confessed to the whole thing. And then he committed suicide, the second person, or supposedly committed suicide. And so you nailed it all. Like it's all been kind of covered up throughout the years. It's been a fight. But as you also said, over the last few years, Lainey Sullivan, my co-host, and I, we did have the FBI involved. And along with Trish Gordon, the sister, we went and spoke with the FBI, and they did take on the case. The girls' bodies were found on federal property in Tennessee. So it's a place called Land Between the Lakes. So that is, like you said, they were found in the woods, and one was shot in the head directly. And then Vickie, who I believe you were talking to, was shot in the back of the head as she was running away.
Oh, wow. And did one of them, well, I know they're half siblings. So like that's, I think my confusion is, did one of them lose like a parent from like another case?
Yeah. So that's crazy. So Trish Gordon and Vickie, they had a father who was living in Texas, if I have this right, and he was also murdered as well. Just completely separate random case.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like they go together.
Right.
It seems like two separate, unfortunate, like horrible, unfortunate like events. And yeah, it's I'm not gonna lie, I'm like a little shocked that that this even came through the way it did. So I'm sorry if I'm like a little speechless right now. I'm just like a little shocked, just because it came through so strong, and also how thankful they are of you guys. It seems, because they're just so happy. Like they're just happy. Did you want to take on the case because it was like in your hometown? Like, is that like kind of how it like originated?
Yeah. Well, it took place not far from where I grew up in Tennessee. I live in New Jersey now. not far from where I grew up. And my co-host and I were looking to start a podcast. And then I saw one of my high school friends posting about his aunts who had passed away, which would be Carla and Vickie. And I asked him what happened. His name is BJ Gordon. This is Trisha's son. And I said, would your family be interested in letting us tell their story? And so we started out just wanting to tell what happened to Carla and Vickie because they were very forgotten about. Like they, didn't come from a lot of money and it just kind of got swept under the rug. It was huge cover up throughout the community and no one would talk. And this kind of goes back to what you were saying also, is everybody in that town was afraid to talk because it's a small town with the good old boy system. And they were threatened. People were threatened if they didn't do this, that they would end up like Carla and Vickie, and that people were just terrified to talk. So 40 years later, we started the podcast and people started ringing our line like crazy. So it ended up being more investigative than us just telling their story. I wanted to be a voice for them. And it just ended up being, we started collecting information left and right. And we started working with the TBI and working with the FBI. And so it's progressed and it's moved forward. And it seems like they know who it was, but it's just a matter of getting the right pieces together.
I've noticed that in smaller towns with doing a lot of these cases and stuff, a lot of the problems is people don't want to speak. They just don't want to talk. And it really causes like such a big problem because sometimes maybe they don't know who did it, but they saw like an interaction or they saw something. And that's kind of what she was saying is there was other eyeballs that could have seen things just like in general, right? But what I've noticed, and this is like kind of what you were just saying too, is that, with these towns, whether it's like a super small town or like kind of a small town, people just won't talk because they want to keep things moving and like they don't want to focus on a murder. Like it's a small town and they just want to keep things kind of going in a different direction. And it does cause a problem because it's not fair to the families, really.
Right.
And also, I think in general speaking too, like sometimes, and I wanted to ask you this. So like, this is something that I was curious about because she kept emphasizing this to me. It's like, sometimes no matter what profession you're in, people get lazy and they just don't want to do like their, sometimes their job, whether it's police, a bus driver or whoever. She kept saying it's like a result sometimes of like lazy police work. It just seems like they went to a certain point and they're like, we're good. And we're done. We're good and we're done. Obviously mixed with what we just spoke about the, I guess you could say corruption piece of it. But it just seems like it's kind of crazy. I don't know. It's just like really crazy to me seeing this like all over the country. And I'm sure now since you have this podcast and stuff and the power of podcasting, I wanted to talk to you about. We did a case recently and we helped, but the power of podcasting was the amount of people that were calling in, giving information and tips, and it started getting larger and larger. Like, did you see that happen instantly or did it gradually take time?
Funny enough, pretty instantly. And I think what it was, two things. I think because Lainey and I live in New Jersey, we're not police, we're not law enforcement. I mean, we're not lawyers, we're not law enforcement at all. We're not even technically journalists at all. So it's kind of like we were just kind of like faceless people, and they felt like I can call this hotline and tell what I know and get this off my conscience. And like, they could be anonymous if they want. If the problem with being anonymous sometimes is like, well, I need to forward this information to the TBI and the FBI, and can they reach out? So by the time the end of the conversation is over, I could usually get someone to say, yes, they can call me. So, but that is also a challenge. It's like, and then sometimes they tell me something and then I tell them and they go interview them and they tell them something different because they just don't. I think people are actually terrified of being called into court or being called in to testify, and they don't want to do that.
I agree with you so much on that because when I work on cases and then people call, the FBI or law enforcement or the department that I'm working with will be like, they had something that was useful, but they don't want to like give us their full name, or they just don't want to testify at all. So they're like, we can't necessarily like investigate anything because they're kind of putting up a barrier. And then there was another time we worked on a case, and I wanted to ask you this because, I think it would shine some light for me, I think. we worked on the case and the police reached out and they're like, there's too many tips being like sent to us. You need to like stop. They're like, it's really messing up our investigation because they just keep calling and calling and calling. And they're like, some are useful and some are theories. So they're like, it's a lot. So I wanted to know if you had that issue with like so many people getting invested in just calling and they're like, oh my God, this is overwhelming.
Yes, exactly. So 100%. We have so many phone calls come in. But what's interesting is like sometimes they're all telling the same story or sometimes it's way off. But you can start pulling little pieces from every conversation. I guess if you want to put it like a puzzle, which I kind of feel like that's a cliche to say, but like you can take a little bit from this conversation, a little bit from this conversation. And then sometimes I'll go back through old recordings. I mean, we've been on this case for 5+ years. And sometimes I'll just sit down and go listen to old recordings. I'm like, oh my gosh, now this call makes sense. Like this kind of goes with this, which I didn't think that was important. But now it seems important because it matches up with something I just heard.
That's crazy. So for 5 years, you've been getting calls like nonstop from people.
Yeah.
Is it like, I guess you kind of answered, but I think I'm curious about it. Like, do you have people that call that are just fans of the case?
Yeah, sometimes, and they just want to repeat what they've heard.
Right.
Like, oh, I heard this happen, then I heard this happen, and I don't listen because, like I said, sometimes there's a little nugget in there that does pop. I'm like, well, I haven't heard that actually, and so I'll keep it on record, and like maybe it'll come useful. But yeah, sometimes some people just want to talk. They want to like talk about it more.
Oh my God, I've been getting these like messages from when I do these cases, and I have to read them because I'm like, I need to pass it along if it's something like important. And sometimes, people have the best intentions, I think, and actually, they really seem like they do, but then they start giving their own theory. And they start doing that. And then it gets so confusing because you're like, wait a minute, like, is this a tip or a theory? And then you read it all and you're like, it's a theory. like it's hard to like do that. And it's funny you bring up the puzzle piece thing. Because when I tell people, like when I work with law enforcement and stuff, I say I'm such a small piece to a larger puzzle. That's like the phrase I use all the time for people. Because that's how I feel. I feel like I'm such a minute piece to a larger puzzle that they are putting the pieces in. And I think, and you can attest to this too, I think people think that, you do the podcast, you do this stuff, whatever, and there's answers instantly and movement instantly. And it's like, it's not really like that. Like they have to do their due diligence and get evidence and stuff. Do you see with your listeners that they want to see like faster movement in the case? Because that's what I've been noticing. And I don't know if I'm the only one. I'm like, I don't know.
Yes, they do get frustrated and they're like, what happened with the DNA testing? And I'm like, well, no one can really share that information. Right. So I try to explain that, whether the answers are there or not, we can't really share that. And they're like, what's happening with the case? So I do get messages all the time. But one of the like great things is when all of a sudden you uncover something that no one has touched yet. In 44 years, you're like, no one ever talked to this person. And we've uncovered, 3 or 4 people now that nobody even knows about. Like, really? I don't even know if they know their names. Like, they don't know them, but they have information. So that's been very helpful because all the information we got kind of led here. And like, just going back through paperwork and going through their autopsy reports and things like that, we find little things that just never got, just got looked over, I think.
One of the things that I saw, which I it's like when, like, going to a gun store, right? Mm-hmm. And the person who sells you bullets or sells you the gun, and you can get, like, if you take a bullet and you can match the ID to a bullet and you can kind of trace back, because that's just what it is. If someone buys, I'm using this as an example, like a shotgun, like shell, and it's a certain type of shotgun shell, you can kind of trace back like who bought it from what time period, because you have to do that through the inventory. And I don't know if it's obviously more strict now than it was back then, but she's saying to me there's like different avenues that people need to go down, which is like you go down the gun store person, then you go down just like simple gas station, like simple things like that. And that's what she's saying, that people are on the things, I guess you could say, that was looked over, because she's saying like cases, and I agree, cases aren't so black and white, right? Like, obviously people probably did go over, like, if there was people that witnessed them like talk to a car, get in a car or something. But then there's more people that saw more about it that probably didn't say anything because it seems like all different angles of stuff. And that's what, you were just saying is that it does seem like you guys cracked the code on a couple things from what I'm just seeing from them because they're just very excited. So that's why.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's just exciting because, again, I know it's a stupid phrase that I used before, but it's like the put up or shut up they're saying about for the law enforcement. It's like now you have to explain everything now. You can't just say evidence got destroyed, and then people would be like, all right, I guess things happen. She's like, they're showing me things don't happen like that. And I do agree. Things don't just happen like that. So that's why I'm like, I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. And I think it's amazing that you're shining so much light on this case because this is now learning about it is if the mom and the family deserve answers. They just do. And I think it's awesome what you're doing. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Their mom, she's in her 90s now, and I really hope she can get some answers before,
of course,
she moves on. And she's still in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
So her mind's still there. Yeah. So I really hope though that they can, get some answers for her.
What's interesting too is I think when there is police corruption like that is going on, I've been learning that it happens more than we think. Even to present day, it just happens. But what I've also learned too, or just I guess not learned but noticed, I guess while doing this is it's in small towns. A lot of it is in small towns. It's a little bit harder to do with NYPD, LAPD, or anything like that because there's checks and balances that come in with things. And I just have learned that there's some bad eggs that are in a small town that can really, literally, as the phrase is, get away with murder. Can literally just get away with murder. And that's why I'm happy that you are here, and I'm happy that your podcast and everything seems to be helping so much because that's the biggest part. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this and why I shifted away from, doing readings for public figures. I was like, I've been working with law enforcement. I want to help families just bring exposure to cases because that's how you get answers. Because then someone may call you or email you and be like, hey, you missed this, and this, and this. And maybe you're saying, some of it is okay, that's a theory. But then some of it, you're like, wait a minute. That kind of makes sense. So I think it's so cool what you're doing. And it is kind of you're an investigative journalist, in my opinion, because you are doing that. At least in my opinion. In my humble opinion. In my humble opinion.
Now you said that in episodes that we would do, we'd bring up a certain name, somebody that was a friend or not really involved, but something else happened to them along the way. And then the episode would air. And the next day, that kid's sister would call me and say, you had this right and this right, but let me tell you the real story about that. And so then I'd bring her on and we would interview. And every single person that I've probably ever mentioned in the podcast, we get a phone call from someone that either, nicely corrects us or wants to tell their side of it or whatever. But the one person who has never, ever, no one has ever called on their behalf is the person that is person of interest. And not a single person, not a wife, not a child, not a mother, not a aunt, cousin, friend. No one has called on that person's behalf to say anything. Yeah,
because it does seem like the person that's the person of interest is a connected person. In a sense where there was I always say connected as maybe their law enforcement or their family was law enforcement or something like that. For the people, when I say connected, I don't mean mafia or anything.
Right.
Yeah. I think because I'm from New York and you're from New Jersey now. So it's people will be mafia. It's no, it's a connected person has family or is in law enforcement. And I also think too, and I wanted to ask you this, because the times are so different, right? This happened 30, 40 years, you were saying. I think it was a little bit easier to navigate that side of stuff. Even as far as if you needed someone to cover your tracks, it's a little bit easier to do then than it is now because now we have body cams and really all of that stuff. But back then it's their word was gospel, really.
Yeah.
Do you see that now? Do you see that they're... And I want to ask you this too. This is a part 2 to the question, so I'm sorry. Do you still talk to or have you spoken to people in that time period of the two girls, whether it was ex-law enforcement or anyone like that?
There's one ex-law enforcement one police officer who was one of the first on the scene still living. I mean, he's, way up there, but he and I spoke. He told me a lot of important things, and he was kicked off the force because he wouldn't let the case go. The sheriff and the head of the TBI told everyone, no one else covers this case, just the two of us, the two of us will take on this case. Everyone else leave it alone. And this particular deputy wouldn't let it go. He knew what happened. Yeah. He had already dealt with the situation before with this person, and he knew exactly what had happened. And someone told him that they saw this guy pick up the girls. Like you said it earlier too, that more people knew it, who it was that picked up the girls. And he was released from the force, and he can never, to this day, like he's cried when we've spoken, and he just feels like he's gonna not be able to see the end of it.
I wanted to ask, what's your podcast name? Where can anyone listen to it? I want everyone to be updated because I'm going to be listening now. I want to be updated. I want to know this stuff. What's your podcast name?
It's called Murder at Land Between the Lakes.
And where can they listen to it? I'm assuming Apple, Spotify, all that?
Yeah, just about every platform it's on, I think, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And do you release once a week or multiple times a week?
So we haven't released much on Carla and Vickie's case in the last year or so because we've uncovered a lot of things that we can't even talk about.
I'm sure,
Yeah, so I really have no, information I can share or we can share. So we've actually been covering more missing persons and unsolved cases in Tennessee as well. So since their case, we've just been taking on individual cases as well. And they've been really interesting as well. I mean, they're all from Tennessee, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on here. And thank you for sharing this story. I'm hooked on this case. And if I can help in any way, you obviously can reach out any way I can help.
Thanks, Jonathan. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all you do. I think you're amazing. So
thank you. Amelia, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you so much for doing the work for your community. If you want to listen to her podcast, it's called Murder at the Land Between the Lakes. And you can listen to it wherever you get your podcast from. And if you have any information regarding this case, please call 1-800-TBI-FIND. Guys, this was an amazing episode. And please don't forget, if you have any cases that you were affected by or you want me to speak about, DM it to my Instagram at JonathanMarkMedium or email it at connectjonathanmark@gmail.com. Also, guys, please don't forget to rate and review the show. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you next week.